Alarms are screaming through the medical bay before I even understand what happened to me. My name is Vex, third born of House Minar, and the last thing I remember clearly is my own voice saying something sharp about a filing mistake. Now there are 4 surgeons leaning over me, and the ceiling lights look wrong, too bright, spinning slightly, and someone is shouting numbers that mean nothing to me. Cheekbone fractured in 2 places, a voice says, fast and flat, the voice of Dr. Ocelith, who I recognize even upside down and dizzy. Orbital socket cracked. Get the regenerative frame ready. Now. Not in a minute. Now. I try to speak and my jaw refuses to work properly. What comes out is a broken sound, not words. Ocelith glances down at me for half a second, her eyes narrowing, and then she is back to shouting orders at the medical team like I am a building on the verge of falling down. I did not expect any of this when the day began. I am a cadet at the Concordance Officer Academy, a training station built to hold cadets from a dozen worlds, all of us learning to work together, fight together, and apparently, in my case, end up in emergency surgery together. My unit had 1 human cadet. His name is Daniel Reeve. He was placed with us because someone in the assignment office thought mixing species early would build character. I think, now, lying on this table, that whoever made that decision should be the one explaining it to Dr. Ocelith. Daniel is from Earth, a planet the Concordance Biological Registry lists as a hazard environment, the kind of place that tries to kill its own people constantly, through heavy gravity, wild weather, and diseases that seem to evolve out of pure stubbornness. Humans grow up surviving all of that with nothing but their bare skin and a strange, endless confidence that everything will probably be fine. I did not understand what that meant for the rest of us until this morning. It started small. Daniel had filed a maintenance request incorrectly, mixing up 2 form codes that look almost identical if you are not paying attention. As the unit's filing liaison, an unpaid job nobody wants, I pointed out his mistake in front of the whole training group. I may have used the word predictable. I may have said something about human paperwork being as messy as human sleeping habits, which, to be fair, are famously chaotic. Daniel did not shout back. He did not report me, which would have been the correct response, and I would have respected it completely. He just looked at me with an expression that I now understand humans use when they have reached the end of their patience, and then he tapped my shoulder to make his point, the way he probably does with his own friends back home without a second thought. That single, ordinary tap is apparently why I am now lying in a medical bay with my face held together by borrowed technology. Stay still, Ocelith orders, snapping my attention back to the present. If you move, the frame will not set correctly, and then you will owe me a much longer conversation than the one you are about to have with the Commandant. I stay still. It is easier than arguing, and honestly, arguing right now would probably come out as more strange noises. The room is full of quick movement. One surgeon adjusts a scanning light above my head. Another prepares a thin silver frame that will hold my cheekbone in place while it heals, murmuring measurements to a data pad. A third checks readings on a screen that shows the inside of my skull in shifting blue lines, and I catch him staring at it a beat too long, the way you might stare at a crack running through a wall you thought was solid. I have worked 12 years in xenomedicine, Ocelith says quietly, almost to herself, and I have never treated an injury from an unarmed human strike, not once. Do you understand how rare that is? It means every human who has ever hit someone this hard usually finishes the job by accident. I want to tell her that Daniel was holding back, that his face afterward looked more shaken than mine felt, but my jaw only allows a mumble, and she waves a hand for me to save my energy. Word must travel fast on this station, because before the surgeons finish the first stage of repair, Commandant Threll is standing in the doorway. Threll is Ferengal, a species that communicates through small shifts in gas pressure along ridged plates on their neck, which makes them very hard to read and even harder to argue with. Right now, those plates are pulsing in a pattern I recognize as barely controlled alarm. Report, Threll says, and it is not a question. Cadet Vex will recover fully, Ocelith answers, not looking away from her work. 2 fractures, 1 hairline crack, structural integrity holding. He is lucky the strike landed high on the cheek and not lower on the jaw. And the human cadet? Currently outside your office, according to my assistant, looking like he wants to disappear into the floor. Threll's plates shift again, something between disbelief and exhaustion. He hit him once. He tapped him once, Oceleth corrects, according to witnesses, and that tap fractured bone that has survived training drills, gravity simulations, and one particularly enthusiastic greeting from a Ferengul cadet last term. I would like that on record. I want to laugh, but laughing right now is a very bad idea, so I settle for a wheeze that makes everyone in the room glance at me with concern before returning to work. Threll leaves to deal with Daniel, and I spend the next several hours drifting in and out of awareness while the surgeons finish stabilizing the frame around my cheekbone. At some point, Oceleth pulls up the full scan of my skull on the main screen so the rest of the team can study it, and I hear murmurs of surprise ripple through the room, the kind of reaction usually reserved for a rare weather event or an unusual specimen brought back from a survey mission. By the third day, I am mostly healed, though my face still feels stiff, like it belongs to someone slightly taller than me. Cadets from other units start finding excuses to walk past the observation window outside my recovery room, where Oceleth has pinned a copy of my scan to a display board. I catch two first-year students staring at it with wide eyes before hurrying off to their next class, whispering to each other. That afternoon, Daniel finally visits. He stands in the doorway for a long moment before stepping inside, holding a small package of something called Get Well Soon candy, which the requisitions office apparently found from a human trader out of pure curiosity about human customs. He looks tired, the kind of tired that comes from worrying, not from lack of sleep. I am really sorry, he says, before I can even greet him. I barely tapped you. I promise. I pull back harder than that when I mess around with my own cousins. Your cousins, I say slowly, my words still a little thick, survive this, regularly. Yeah, sometimes somebody gets a sore nose, but nothing like this. I stare at him for a moment, trying to imagine a family of people who casually tap each other this hard as a form of affection, and I decide I do not have the imagination for it. I think, I say carefully, your species may need a warning label. He almost smiles at that, though guilt is still written clearly across his face. For what it's worth, the doctor told me an adult skull like yours is basically built like reinforced hull plating. Thick, layered, good at absorbing impact. She said if I had actually swung with real force, instead of just barely tapping you, they might not have been able to rebuild your face at all. I have been informed of this, I say, repeatedly, by every surgeon on this station, several of whom now refer to me as the demonstration. It is true, and slightly embarrassing. Dr. Oceleth has already added my scan to the first-year medical lecture, now officially titled Deathworld Physiology and You, Why the Human Cadet is Not Exaggerating. Attendance for that lecture, according to the station gossip network, has never been higher. One cadet from a neighboring unit reportedly requested a transfer out of the joint training program entirely after seeing the images projected on the lecture screen. I did not transfer, partly because of pride, and partly because Daniel, once he understood exactly what his species is capable of, without even trying, became almost unbearably careful. He started apologizing to furniture when he bumped into it too hard. He asked permission to use only a small fraction of his strength during combat drills, a request the instructors approved instantly, with visible relief on their faces. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happens. Daniel and I become close, in the strange way that people sometimes do after surviving something together, even something as small and avoidable as a filing dispute that went too far. He still occasionally misfiles a form. I still occasionally point it out. But I have learned, since that day, to choose my words with a little more care, and he has learned to measure his strength with a little more caution. One evening, sitting in the training hall after drills, Daniel asks me if I regret what happened. I think about the frame still holding parts of my face together, about Dr. Oceleth's lecture with my name attached to it, about the wide-eyed cadets who still glance at me sometimes in the hallway like I survived something extraordinary. No, I say finally, I regret what I said before it happened. Not what happened after. He nods slowly, understanding exactly what I mean without needing further explanation. From that day forward, our unit works differently together. More careful, more patient, each of us learning just how differently the universe treats the people standing beside us. And somewhere in the medical archive of this station, my scan remains on file, a permanent reminder that even a small, careless moment between friends from very different worlds can leave a mark far bigger than anyone expected.